We are about to hop on this trolley and take a tour downtown Louisville. Come along on a guest adventure, where everyone's a guest, including me.
1,000 miles that has this impediment, but it's a set of falls, the Falls of the Ohio. They're only about 6 feet tall, folks. I'm just going to go ahead and go through that. They're only about 6 feet tall, but no boat was able to get around those falls. You literally had to portage around. So any British activity, they were going to see it right away because they were going to have to slow down and go around the falls, get back in their boats, and go. And for a long time, that is the activity that put this town on the map. It became what they call a portage town. So any kind of boat activity, bringing goods and merchandise down the river, they had to stop here. Museum, and you can, if you're lucky, there's going to be a boat coming through the lock. So check that out. Here on the left-hand side is the Louisville Visitor Center. If you go there and you say, hey, I took a ride on the trolley, they're going to give you 25% off whatever merchandise that you happen to be interested in getting. And they're also going to give you a lot of interesting information about Louisville, Kentucky. Other things that you can see and do while you're here. We're now making our way into the legislative and judicial section of town. So you're going to see town, City Hall and other legislative type buildings. Coming up on the right-hand side of the trolley, coming into view right now, big handsome building here on the right. Built in 1830, it was the first City Hall. Today it's not City Hall anymore. The only one who works there is the mayor. Built in 1830. They actually just outgrew it, so they have to build this second. The big statue on the right-hand side is of Thomas Jefferson standing on top of the Liberty Bell, holding a copy of the Declaration of Independence. Anyhow, 1792 is when this, which was the frontier, all of this land that we are now on, that is now called Kentucky, used to be a part of Virginia. And all they did is they just segmented off this section and called it Kentucky, which is now in Florence, Italy. But you can't miss them, that's for sure. Oh, I think these people want to cross, and I guess I'll let them. All right, because I'm just that kind of girl. All right, off we go, folks. Look here on the left-hand side of the trolley, and you can see this little park. That's where the original fort was. So when this became its own little town, the original fort, called Fort Nelson, was placed here in 1780, and that's what that fort commemorates. The big yellow bridge that you see there is a free bridge. It's called the 2nd Street Bridge. So if you don't want to pay the toll going over the I-65 bridge, get on over to 2nd Street Bridge and take that one. That'll get you into Indiana. It won't cost you a nickel. Coming up on the left-hand side of the trolley again, you're going to see a couple of boats here. Paddle boats, steamboats. The first one is the Mary Miller. Named for Mary Miller, she was the first female to get a steamboat pilot license in 1884, and then right in front of it is the Belle of Louisville. It is still a functioning steamboat, 111 years old. You can take a trip on that, go up the river. They have dinner tours. They have all kinds of cool things happening on the Belle of Louisville, and it looks exactly as it did when it was built 111 years ago. So it's pretty street is also called Whiskey Row and Museum Row. Why? Because there's lots of both of those things here on this street, on Main Street. If you look just ahead as I make my right, you're going to look to the left, and you see all those circles there on the sidewalk? All of those represent hoops, whiskey barrel hoops, because whiskey is king, bourbon is king here in Louisville, Kentucky. And if you have any interest in whiskey at all, this is the place to be. You see the little fleur-de-lis? That represents the guy who this town was named for, Louis XVI, King of France. Experience, not so much on making that product. It's more of a museum, but it's really, really interesting. He arrived here in the late 1700s, and he opened up the first, right around where those hoops were that I was showing you. He opens up the first commercial distillery in the late 1700s. If you're interested in art, once again, the black building right here on the right, that is the Kentucky Center for Arts and Crafts. Check that out. Again, on the right-hand side, blue columns, that's the Science Center. So if you got little ones with you, or even if you don't, they have an amazing IMAX theater in there. You could go in and check out whatever they happen to be showing at the time, and those movies change constantly so that they stay interesting. And you see all the other flags. Bourbon City It's the Bourbon City. It is the Derby City. Lots and lots of stuff going on here. Mitchell's Distillery, distilleries all over the place. Here's another one, Barrels and Billets. And those guys are owned by these guys right next door, this Louisville Slugger Museum and Factory. Go in there, folks. Watch them make Louisville Slugger bats. That's what they do. And that bat is 120 feet tall. It is hollow, made of steel. If you started pouring bourbon into the top of that vat, it would take 36,000 gallons to fill it up. This is also the beginning of the Bourbon Trail. So this is Whiskey Row, but this is part of the Bourbon Trail. It's about an 80-mile drive from Louisville to Bardstown to Lexington. And you're going to find distillery after distillery. This is the Fraser Museum. It is stop number 1 on the Bourbon Trail. Go in there. It's got amazing history. Look at the horse. They're going to talk to you about. You're going to see some handsome statues here on the left-hand side. A statue commemorating our firemen and firewomen. And again, at another angle, you're going to see another structure with an eternal flame, and that commemorates the sacrifices of first responders who have been killed in the line of duty. On the left, or rather on the right-hand side, Louisville Metro Department of Corrections, aka jail. And during Derby week, that thing really fills up by 400 to 500 new guests, new inmates, because during Derby week, our bars, which normally close at 4 a.m., don't close till 6, and they open up again at 7. So you got a whole bunch of people getting a lot of liquor in and getting real frisky and winding up spending the week in there. Of an old German beer hall. Gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. Now there are 2 celebrities in particular who used to go to the Seelbach. And those are the 2 that they talk about most often there. There are cutouts of these 2 celebrities. One of them was F. Scott Fitzgerald, who got his inspiration for The Great Gatsby from the Seelbach Hotel. During the early 1900s, he was here at Fort Taylor. He was training to go over to Europe for World War I. And he used to go there and he would drink bourbon, lots of it. If you've ever read about F. Scott Fitzgerald, he had a serious issue with drinking. That was a big problem for him. And he used to smoke expensive cigars. And then he would get very frisky and tiresome, and they would kick him out. And then he would go back. He had his own little private room for gambling and playing cards with his friends, with secret exit on how to get out, little tunnels where he could escape if he had to, if the cops were coming in. It's an amazing place. Coming up on the right-hand side is the Louisville Water Company. Why do I even mention that? Who cares about water? We do. The water in Louisville has been voted the best tap water in the country 17 years in a row. Why that? Why here? Because we got a lot of limestone underground. And what it does is it acts as a natural filter for all of the water, so it takes out all the yucky tasting impurities like iron and other minerals that just don't taste very good. So our tap water, don't fear the tap water, folks. It's quite good. A Victorian, beautiful Victorian home. Look at this one. Huge, generally right around 7,000 square feet, most of these houses, just gigantic. Who was living here back in the late 1800s, late 1700s, early 1800s, and then into the early 1900s? Well-to-do people, people who were distillers, people who were doing all that transportation and distribution when you still couldn't get around that barrier, you couldn't get around the falls. People were going to help you with that, and they made a lot of money doing it. It was typically a 7 to 8 week project to move all your goods and your boat to the other side of the falls. So it was a portage town, and a lot of people made good on that. Who else did we have here? Distillers. We had professionals, so doctors, lawyers, architects, those types of people. They wanted this to be their address. In fact, the street we're on right now, which is 3rd Street, was called Millionaires Row back in the day. This is where you wanted to be. But 3 things happened that brought this neighborhood to its knees. The first one was prohibition. We had all these distillers, and now they're illegal. They can't distill their liquor anymore. That happened in 1919. 6 were allowed to continue to distill, but only 6. All the rest had to close their doors, and they were allowed to distill for medicinal purposes only. So that first year, 11 million prescriptions were written for medicinal whiskey, yeah. And you could get it every 10 days. You could get 1 ounce of whiskey every 10 days if you had a prescription, but that's it. The next catastrophe that happened was the Great Depression. A lot of people here lost their shirts and they lost everything. And finally, the final straw that really brought this neighborhood down was the Great Flood of the Ohio River in 1937. The Ohio overleaped its banks by 57 feet, folks. 57 feet. Right now, we are a mile and a half away from the river. This neighborhood was flooded 34 feet. So what happened to all these houses? They were ruined. And many of them were just abandoned. They never bothered to fix them. They just abandoned these houses. And this was not a place that you wanted to visit or be. From the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, you had a whole lot of crime here, a whole lot of squatters living in these empty buildings. You had drugs, you had alcohol, all kinds of stuff going on. No one wanted to be here. 1990s, the city officials decide we need to do something. And so they offered all these houses for sale for $1. $1, you could buy the house. Oh wait, but you couldn't then turn around and sell it. You had to promise to live in the house, renovate the house. You couldn't sell it right away, move in and then turn around and sell it. You couldn't. And you had to maintain it as it was when it was originally bought. You couldn't change it. This is an amazing house built in 1893, the Conrad Caldwell House and Museum. So if you want to get a tour of that great house inside, you can. And I do recommend, though, that you make sure that they're open. I've been there a couple times when they weren't. Don't know when they're going to start it. Apparently, they're waiting until they're positive there's no more freezes going to happen so that the pipes don't freeze. It looks like maybe they're doing a tour over there. Again, lots of walking tours through here, and you can learn a whole lot more. It's an amazing neighborhood, absolutely amazing. If your house started out its life as a boarding house, it has to stay a boarding house. If it started out as a private home, it has to stay a private home. The fixtures inside, the lights and those kinds of fixtures, they have to stay. They don't have to be hooked up to that old AC electric, but they have to maintain the look. You can update it with plumbing and so forth and electricity, but you can't change anything that was once there. Look at this great house, built in the 1920s. That's the pink house. Now, it didn't start out pink. It was a gentleman's club. They said, uh-oh, we got to do something about this. And so a local Christian women's group bought it, and they painted pink. And then after that, it got on the National Historic Register, and they can't not keep it pink from here on out. Supposedly, there's a ghost that lives there. His name is Avery, and the only time Avery shows up is when somebody's about to get hurt, when something bad is about to happen, almost like he's warning people. So there was a lady there who was visiting in her bathtub. She was taking a bath, and she sees Avery, and she jumps out of the tub. She's frightened, and right after that, a big cinder block goes through the window, lands in the tub. Someone's trying to break in. So it was almost like a warning. Look at this guy here, this St. James Court lamplighter. He used to be a big old tree that got struck by lightning, and then they had someone come out and just take the remains of that tree and carve out the lamplighter. Another thing that happened was they saw Avery another time, and right after they saw the ghost in the kitchen of that house, a fire broke out. And so they were aware, they were there, and they were able to put out that fire. So is he real? Who knows? But that is their ghost, Avery. They have an amazing art festival that happens here every first week of October. This is where you want to be. It's the largest in the Midwest. 300,000 people attend it, and it's all in this area right here, this St. James area. And just across the street, this big beautiful park here is Central Park, Louisville Central Park, designed by the same guy who did Central Park in New York City, Frederick Law Olmsted. They have a Shakespeare festival here. We expect this to be starting quite soon, and they constantly are changing those plays, so they're fun and they're interesting. It's going to be bumpy for another maybe a half mile. In the 1840s, you had a whole bunch of professionals living here in this neighborhood. They had to get into town to go to work. So they installed a trolley system here, horse-drawn trolley system in the 1840s. 1880s, it became an electric trolley system. And then by the 1940s, everyone had a car. So they took out the trolleys. And what did they do? Did they pull out the tracks? No. They just covered them over with asphalt. So bumpy. not that comfortable to go down this road, but it's about to stop. It only lasts for a minute or so. As we make our way into the campus of the University of Louisville. Museum, open on Sundays and free. So they're not going to charge you anything if you go there today. They've got a Picasso in there, a Rembrandt, a Rubens, so beautiful art and famous works of art. But I'm going to show you another one. I'm going to put on my flasher so that I can almost come to a stop. You can see this final piece of art coming up on the left, and if you're going to look all the way across the lawn at the Hansel building with the white columns, that's Graumeier Hall, and you see the statue right there in front. That's a thinker, folks. The thinker, not the original. Now, the original was sculpted by Rodin in 1905, but immediately after he made the statue, he had 26 copies made that he supervised himself, and that's one of those copies right there. And you notice the building itself, does it remind you of a famous building in the country? Maybe Monticello? Thomas Jefferson's house? It was modeled after Monticello. But that's where the thinker is. And you can drive up in that circle and have a closer look if you like. We're approaching Churchill Downs right now, this big white structure. The race itself, Churchill Downs, was founded in 1875 by a member, once again, of the Clark family. Meriwether Lewis Clark, the grandson of William Clark from the Lewis and Clark expedition. He was actually out visiting in Europe for a period of time, and he noticed all the horse racing that was going on there, the jockey clubs, and he loved it, and he said, we need to do that in Kentucky. So he came back, and he got started, borrowed some land, got some free land from his uncles, the Churchill brothers, and he started the Kentucky Derby. Now, something appears to be going on here, folks. Parking to park. Park. I don't know what this is about, folks, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to see if I can get into where I normally get into. And if I cannot get in there, we're going to keep on going. There's another place that I can stop you at Nulu's. But we're going to try this. Let's see what happens. I have no idea what's going on.
Our trolley made a stop at Churchill Downs. We're about halfway through our tour. It's an 1.5-hour tour. There's a Kentucky Derby Museum. We get to go inside. Inside is a replica of one of the gates that the horses come out of. And look at the top. They have a little symbol up there. And that's on the wall. The roses for the Kentucky Derby. And we're going to head on into the museum store. All kinds of very interesting different souvenirs. There's a coaster that's a horseshoe. That was our quick look inside the gift shop at the Kentucky Derby. There is something going on here. They have horse races all the time. At the time of this recording, it's about a week past when the actual Kentucky Derby went off. But it's an amazing place. It's huge. It's a lot of fun. But when's my new hat? I didn't buy one from the Kentucky Derby, but I got one from Louisville Slugger. You can't get hats everywhere. I try, but you just can't.
If you're going to ride on a horse in the Kentucky Derby, you have to weigh no more than 126 pounds. What happens if you don't weigh as much as you need to? And that includes all your tackle, your saddle, and get them up to that 126 pounds. Of course, if you're too heavy, you know what to do about that. It's the thing that I find impossible to do as I've gotten older. But my metabolism went on vacation about 15 years ago, and it hasn't shown its face since. Okay, so that's how they take care of that. Head back to the University of Louisville now, everybody. Restaurant in Kentucky, little town called Corbin, Kentucky, and he was doing great. He had other people putting up. He was spreading his Kentucky fried chicken empire. He had restaurants all over the place. It started to kind of catch up with him when he was 73. He was like, he was tired. To be a Presbyterian seminary. Today it's a community college, Jefferson County Community College. And speaking of the Jewish hospital, which is where Harlan Sanders passed away, that guy's really moving kind of fast. There we go. We're heading into Hospital Row right now, here on the right-hand side. A whole bunch of hospitals, including Jewish Hospital where Mr. Sanders died. Another claim to fame for the Jewish hospital, they did the first hand transplant ever, and they still do those. And they also did the first mechanical heart on a woman, on a female. University of Louisville has a very strong medical program for dentists in particular, nursing program, and they have a hospital here as well. First emergency room in the country was started at the University of Louisville. And that is the Kentucky Derby drink. One of the top 10 food neighborhoods. We're heading into it right now, according to Forbes magazine. I think I was telling someone earlier that I just read on one of these websites that food-wise, Kentucky punches way higher than its weight. And it does. It's amazing food here. Look here on the left, Angel's Envy. That is a distillery. They do the whole thing from start to finish product of bourbon. So if you want to learn more about it, they have a tour, and you can go in there and just check it out. Very, very interesting. We are now in the New neighborhood proper. You may look across here through my front window. You see the guy there with the frizzy hair? Yeah, who's that, everybody? That's Bob. Yeah, Bob Dylan. He has a distillery here. And it includes that whole church, which was abandoned. And he does art. He does metal art and painting art, and he distills his own wine. It's called Heaven's, not wine, but bourbon, Heaven's Door. You're going to see Muth's Candy, M-U-T-H-S. 4 generations of candy makers there. Amazing candy. Right next door to that, there's a place called Taste, and you can go in there and do tastings of bourbon and wine. 400 different kinds of bourbon. Mish Mish, considered one of the best Mediterranean restaurants in the country. The chef at Mish Mish was a runner-up for the Jacob Beard Award for Best Chef last year in the country. So it's an amazing place to go. If you want an incredible Cuban food, Cuban meal, check out here on the left-hand side, La Morenita. I just ate there recently, folks. I will never forget this meal. Make a reservation. It's busy, great atmosphere inside, beautiful food, beyond belief. Now, we don't have any kind of particular barbecue identity in Kentucky, except for Paducah, where they have something called lambicue, so it's lamb barbecue. These guys do mustard style and then tomato-based type barbecue, and it's amazing. This place is exploding, the New neighborhood. Used to be a tough place. Stockyards and on, but not anymore. Look here on the right-hand side. I just stopped there the other day, Butchertown Grocery and Bakery. Oh my gosh, the baked goods there, out of this world. Big, big recommendation. Fantastic.
Right, our trolley started and ended at the Galt, which is the largest hotel in Kentucky, 1,600 rooms. And we're going to try to find some place to eat and something else to do for today, and then we're going to be heading back to Detroit. All right, well, that's the end of our tour of Louisville, and we're going to head one other place, and then we're going to head for home. So thanks for coming along on this guest adventure, or everyone's a guest, including me. See you on another video.